Today's webinar is going to be all about putting your best application forward, and we're going to talk specifically about the value of the VetLink addendum in the application process. I am Whitney. I am the director of VetLink. Just a little bit of background about myself. I do have a BA in mathematics, an MA in secondary education, and most recently my MEd in higher education from UPenn. I have had, not only have I been an educator most of my adult life, I also have had the honor and pleasure of reading applications for the University of Pennsylvania most recently. And I am excited that I now get to impart all of my time and experience into service members being able to do their applications and put their best foot forward. I am so happy that I am joined today by Colleen Mallett of Vassar. Colleen, if you'd like to take a moment to introduce yourself, I'd love that.
Sure. So here at Vassar, I'm the Director of Veteran Students Outreach and Support. That means that I do some recruiting of student veterans for Vassar, assist through the application process, and then once you're on campus, I'm your support person, your ally, your advocate, and can walk you through your however many years here at Vassar. And I've been working with the veteran student population for about 12 or 13 years now here at Vassar.
Phenomenal, Colleen. I love everything that you do there at Vassar for our service members. Like we said, the VetLink addendum is something that is only available to our partner schools. And like I said, Colleen there at Vassar is one of our partner schools. We have 29 as of right now. And the VetLink addendum is another piece of your application puzzle. It is really what I would consider a very large piece to the holistic discussion that is had during the application process. I am tickled that Colleen is here, because Colleen is actually one of the people that she reads your application and is part of the conversation in the admissions process. And she is one of the people that advocates for you to be a member of our campus. So I really think it's important to have Colleen's perspective about the application process and where the VetLink addendum plays into that process. And she's also here to help you fill out and some of the do's and don'ts that they would like to see on your VetLink addendum. Colleen, can you tell me a little bit about how you guys use the VetLink addendum in the application process?
Sure. So I'd say one of the ways we use it is as to help us with a timeline, right? So when we're looking at a student's application, we're looking at that timeline of from high school graduation to now the present, where you are applying to come to Vassar, right? Where have you been during those years? And that VetLink addendum can help us with that. And that's why it's really important to add dates to, along the way of that addendum, right? What was job one, what was job two, et cetera, what were those dates? We also use the essay portion of the addendum, right? And that's a really great tool for you, because this is your chance to tell us things about yourself that you weren't able to address in the Common App, right? Many times the Common App will have a particular prompt or prompts for you, right? So that's asking you a question that you have to answer. So you've answered that question, you've filled out all the other parts of the application, but you may have been all the time kind of in the back of your mind going, well, hey, I really want to tell them about X, about this particular experience or this particular time in my life. And this is your chance to do that with that, to use that essay to do that. Kind of helps us kind of round out the whole person by using the essay portion of the agenda of the essay. The other thing that's really important is your MOS, right? Describing those jobs. And I think, as Whitney will talk about, how you can use that to tell us how that relates to academics. In many ways it does.
Yeah, so in kind of going from that, we're actually going to talk a little bit about some of those do's and don'ts when it comes to filling out the VetLink addendum. In many ways, it seems very straightforward. In other ways, it can be really kind of confusing, especially, the longer you've been in the military. So that being said, we're going to kind of dive right into it. So obviously the most important piece where you want your background and your demographic information, a very important piece is that job description, as Colleen was saying. It's very easy to want to maybe copy and paste those descriptions. One, we can see when you have copy and pasted something, it's usually quite obvious. But two, Colleen, do you have any military experience?
Personally, I do not.
Okay, so typically our admissions officers who are going to be reading this are not going to have any military experience. So they're not going to understand exactly what you're saying if you were to say copy and paste something that was from your MOS. You are going to, hopefully, what we ideally would like you to do is try to give us kind of a little bit more of a breakdown of it. We definitely don't want to see any military jargon used in there, or if you do, please explain what it is. You can use the term breacher and nobody's going to know what a breacher is. So we want to make sure that, the person that is reading it, it's all going to be understandable to them. Try to do the highlights, right? Those hard and soft skills. We want to make sure that we are seeing those in your descriptions of everything. In this case, the very first section that we get to is the military awards. Not every service member is going to have too many military awards. For you, Colleen, would it be, I'm assuming that you would not be put off by only seeing 2 service awards, right?
Oh, not at all. No.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't put a whole lot of emphasis on the awards, but it's nice to see there's what the certain achievements that you may have met. But it is an important piece, right? To see these. But when we're not looking at it and saying, oh, you only had 1 military award, right? Not at all. It's just nice to see. It just adds to the whole person. Again, looking at this from a holistic point, it's kind of well-rounded individual.
So military schools. This is where we definitely want to see that demilitarizing your schools and your training that you've been to. One, I want to make a very important note, as I actually just had someone the other day who submitted their VetLink addendum and only had like 1 school listed. And I was like, well, I'm pretty sure you've gone to more than 1 school. The thing is, they need to also see the value in every school that they have attended. Every school you've attended, every training that you have done, you have gained some type of skill. And this is where I say don't copy and paste, right? This is where we want to see those skills come out to play. Again, skills that are hard skills, those that are learned that you can replicate, and then of course those soft skills. You can't always teach leadership skills and things like that. So we want to make sure that those are coming across in your descriptions of your schools and the training that you've gone to. Colleen, do you have any notes for this?
Yeah, I do. A couple of things. It's interesting. I was looking at a couple of these recently, and someone had talked about they were doing aircraft maintenance, right, and listing all the aircrafts that they had worked on, right. And they worked on a P3 and a P8 and a MV-22 and like listed all of this, and here's where I was going. What does this mean? Right. So this is a place where, like you're saying, use some of that plain language, right? So instead, you tell us that you worked on an Osprey, a military transport helicopter, right? These are things that are a little more in layman's terms that, those of us reading the files can go, oh yeah, now I get it. Now that's a really big plane, or that's a fighter jet, those type of things that makes it a little more meaningful for us, right? To do that translation. But in these military, as well as the schools, I had someone who had applied who had done kind of a special ops medic course, right? And I was trying to make a case to our committee that, there's we can translate a lot of academic skills from this particular course. So I used the ACE military guide, right, from the American Council of Education. And through that, I could see that, this course had 4 hours of anatomy and physiology. It had pharmacology, it had physical assessment, 7 hours of critical care. So those were all like really great, in a sense, academic skills. So maybe using that guide to pull out some of those things, again, not with a paste and cut, but listing out that the school you participated in, the school that you went through, had these various hours of these academic skills. And that for us, I could, make a case that, yeah, this student does have a lot of quantitative skills to bring to Vassar.
No, thank you for that. I love that perspective from you. Absolutely. Especially as we know, decisions are currently being made. So you guys are currently having conversation, I believe for you just this week, where you were reading applications and making cases for students, for applicants. So, Colleen is in the middle of reading all of these currently right now. So I thank you for taking the time to do this for me, and talk to our service members. Now this is military experience, right? This is where you're going to put the jobs that you have held since you have been active duty in the military. I personally, I like to see these kind of like you would a resume. I like to see them in kind of reverse order, as in most recent to the first one that you did. And then again, this is don't copy and paste. Make sure that you are, summarizing what you've done. And again, listing a lot of those hard and soft skills that you used. And again, making sure that you're using that layman's language, making sure that, I would always suggest have a civilian read your job description. And if they don't understand a piece of it, then that's the part that you need to explain. Colleen, do you have anything that you would like to add to this?
Yeah, I think the other thing I would add to this is proofread this before you submit it, right? And that's easy to do by just, taking it and throwing it into, like Word and just doing, have Word do the spell check and the grammar check, right? Because I read a lot of these and many times there's a lot of spelling errors that just kind of jump out at you. So by taking a few minutes to just kind of proofread it, and like Whitney said, maybe have somebody else kind of look it over, really helps to strengthen this portion of the addendum.
That actually is one of the things that I always recommend to students as they are going through the VetLink addendum is one, hey, please run this through spell check. We all know the squiggly line. But the second thing is I always tell my applicants, this is a representation of you, right? We want to make sure that you are in every way putting your best foot forward. So I even harp on something as little as, making sure that everything looks visually the same. Again, it's a presentation of yourself. We want to make sure that everything is cohesive. I even go as far as to say, hey, if you didn't use one of these fields, remove it. And make sure that it, looks visually appealing and it looks like you put time, energy, and effort into this application. Again, it is a representation of the applicant. And it's something as little as making sure there's no typos. Read it aloud, making sure that it flows properly, and is definitely conveying everything that they want to get across that page. One of the things that I see a lot of is this is typically where I'm going to see people having like a whole paragraph. Or like their job description is going to take up like half the page. Please do not do that. As people who are going through and reading your applications, we only have so much time that, well, in particular, readers reading in a specific way, they only have so much time to read these applications. So having to potentially look and read at half a page on just one job description or one school description, they don't have that much time. Hence the reason why we tell you to try to summarize it as much as possible. And then a very big piece, make sure that you are doing those job highlights, right? This is where those hard and soft skills that you gained are going to go. And it doesn't have to be long. It can be nice and short, and it can even be in bullet points if that's the way that you want to do it. But making sure that you're giving those highlights to what you did at your job and the skills that you gained.
And if I could add, Whitney, it would be great, like where you're listening, like the job title or in the job description, at some point, put the dates for that job.
Right? Yes.
From August of 2021 to whatever, December of 2021, right? Again, it's helping us to kind of flesh out that timeline.
Yeah, everything in the application process is all about timelines, right? And as you said, it's what were they doing from high school onward? And we want to make sure that there are no gaps in time. Because if there are gaps in time, you and I are sitting there going, ooh, what were they doing for that year that I have nothing for? And this is a very big piece. Please make sure that, you know, as you're going through, make sure there are no gaps in time, right? If there are, make sure that you're filling them in. Or you're prepared to explain why you have such a large gap in time from, you know, be it training, a job, school, whatever it may be. If there's a gap in time, it needs to be explained. Hang on, let me share my screen one more time for the next one. Overseas assignments. This is where oops, sorry. Again, this is one of those where this is where I say clean it up, because not everybody has had overseas assignments. And actually, Colleen, I'm going to ask you about this one.
Sure.
Could this just also be assignments? Again, filling in that gap in time. Do you want it to, you know, should it be just overseas, or would you guys like for it to be maybe assignments that or duty stations or whatever it may be?
Yeah, it could be interesting if it was just assignments.
Okay.
Because I think it'd be easy to flush. I think it'd be easy to see because you're going to put location, then we would understand. Obviously, it was overseas, right?
Yeah.
But that way it could be a little more comprehensive.
Okay. I think I may have to play around with that one and
Yeah.
think about changing that one,
That could be
because yes,
helpful.
at this point in time, we're getting to where not everybody has done an overseas deployment.
Right.
It happens.
Correct.
We're in a stand down in many ways. So I'll play around with this one a little bit, but for right now, and this is where I say clean it up. You know, if you have only done one overseas assignment and all of the rest are blank, well, this is where I'm going to say probably potentially remove them, make it nice, clean, and pretty. Again, it's a representation of you. It does not matter that you don't fill in all of the slots. That's okay. That's completely fine. Just make sure it's nice and pretty and neat and no spelling errors. And of course, this is the one where I think you and I can spend the most time. It's the personal essay, right? We do give a guideline of about 500 words or less, because again, this is still essays. We're still reading all of the other essays, but it's definitely an important piece. And I think, Colleen, you can definitely speak to this a little bit stronger, because you, again, are actively reading these essays and looking for specific things coming from it. So this is where I would love for you to take over.
Yeah, I think that you hit it right on the head by saying, you know, don't paste and cut one of your other essays from the Coalition app or the Common app.
Yeah.
You know, again, use this as a way to tell us something else that couldn't come across in that Common app. And yeah, I mean, there could be all, you know, I think there's some prompts here of things, if you want to relate it to your military experience, if you want to talk about kind of your identity, your community, right? A lot of schools are looking to see kind of like what your community is, what communities are you interested in being a part of once you get to campus. I think that's another like really good prompt you could use here. And you know, there's the prompts on the Common App, many times they change every year, or the schools may have their own essay prompts as well. So, you know, look at those first, kind of, you know, look at the schools you're going to be applying to, look at all those and say, okay, what can I do here that's a little bit different? How can I show a different part of myself? And maybe here is a place that you use this to address that gap in time, right? I graduated from high school in whatever, 1995, entered the Navy in 1997. Okay, what were you doing in those 2 years in between, right? Were you working? Were you raising a family? Were, you know, whatever else it may be, right? You were climbing Mount Everest, whatever you did in that gap of time. But here's a great way to kind of talk about that, you know, that gap in time, just to make it all kind of come together for us.
No, I thank you for that. I do think it's very important. Do not waste words, right? As you're going through all of your essays and, you know, you're trying to meet those 250 word requirements or whatever it may be, right? If you can't fit it into that 250 word essay, then this is a great place for it to potentially go, especially if it's going to give us a much more well-rounded picture of who you are. Again, this is a holistic process, meaning we're looking for the whole picture of who you are, right? So if you've answered all of those other essays and you've gotten everything across, do not repeat it here. Okay, this is a different essay. This is a different space for you to put whatever it is may be. It could be a specific point in time in your military career that, you know, it changed you and you know, changed your path, your trajectory, whatever it may have been. You know, you could take a much larger approach, and you can look at it as, how did the military ultimately prepare you for stepping into a college classroom and making you a successful student? The essay is there to be whatever you need it to be, so that they're seeing a full view of who you are and what kind of student you're going to be and what type of person you're going to be on their campus ultimately, because you're joining a much larger student body. So this is, again, don't repeat, make it fresh, make it new. We are not trying to keep reiterating things. They already know how good of a school they are. They already know that you want to go there. Right. You know, this is personal to you, to your experience, to what makes you the individual, and the individual service member, at the end of the day. 500 words is usually like our, you know, give it a page. If you can't do it in 500 words, that's okay. It can be less, it can be more. Just don't go too crazy, not 2 pages. You know, just, again, the essay is whatever you need it to be, to make sure that someone like Colleen, you know, can read it and make a very compelling argument for you being a student on their campus.
I think I would just want to add, Whitney, that it's used, yes, to see kind of you as a person, right? To see all of you, but it's also being used as a way to look at writing skills. Right?
Right.
That's correct. So the admission office is looking at it to see, you know, okay, how well does this student write, or do they have the potential, right? To, because we all know, you know, there's been a lot of writing, a lot of reading with college work, right? Yeah. So we want to make sure that the student is prepared or has the potential to be able to write at the college level. So I don't want to make that scary in any way, right? But I guess what I'm saying is, you know, take your time with it, right? Take your time with it, put your best effort forward. And sometimes maybe it's quality over quantity, right? You don't need to just go on to fill in the 500 words. Just, you know, what you do, make sure what you do is you've done well, you've done your best.
Before I'm definitely going to give students the opportunity to potentially ask questions of you. But are there any kind of words of wisdom or anything like that you would like to impart as applicants are getting ready to, you know, submit soon? Is there anything that you would like to impart to them?
Sure. I think one thing I would say is when you are filling out the application, right? And there are, I think, like 4 different parts of like the Common App, right? There's the part about kind of your you know, biography, right? Who you are, where you are, that type of thing. Then there's the portion, the academic portion, where you're loading up your transcripts. And then there's a portion, I think it's called like supporting info. And under supporting info, there's, I see folks who leave this completely empty. They don't fill it out at all. And this is where you can tell us, like, we want to know, like at Vassar, when I'm looking at things, tell me about high school, right? Did you run track? Were you involved in any clubs? You know, we're looking back as far as that to the present time. During the service, were you involved in any sort of community service? You know, what are your hobbies? Do you like photography? Are you into Taekwondo? You know, whatever it may be, hiking, backpacking, bicycling, all of those things, right? This is where we can see what makes up the whole you, the whole individual. So I would really say take advantage of that section and don't leave that section blank. That's where, you know, sometimes I have to go hunting, and recently I tracked a student down and I'm like, okay, that whole section was blank. You know, I've talked to you we've had an hour Zoom meeting, and I know there were all these other things you did, but you didn't include it there. So like now put that in a resume and send that to me, because that could be a supplemental piece. And that's another thing too, is, if you have, other things you want us to know that didn't come across, right? You're an artist and you want us to see some of your artwork or your photography. You can add that to your application as like supplemental information. And we would welcome that.
I always harp on the supplement. For many times it's like, hey, do you have a gap? Do you have that gap in time? Well, that's a perfect place to put it. If you can't put it into your personal essays anywhere else, that's a great place to put what did you do within that year.
Mhm.
There should be no gaps in time for anything whatsoever. Again, we're putting a piece, you're a puzzle piece. We're trying to see what the big picture is. So if there's any missing pieces, well, then we have to go, why are there missing pieces?
Mhm.
What was happening? And we're trying to figure it out. And Colleen, you actually, you just kind of encompassed the whole VetLink partnership, right? Just in what you just said. You, having spent time and speaking with our applicants, realized that there was a gap in something for their application. And because of that relationship, you were able to reach out to them and say, hey, I know from speaking to you, there is something there. I need you to then put something together really quickly so that I can take that and I have the proof of what was going on there. And that's truly, I think, the value of that relationship that we have helped create with the VetLink and everything else, is making sure that those applicants, again, I had my own applicant that you had to reach out to me and said, hey, I'm missing a little piece. Can you get it for me? And, we're able to, very quickly turn around and get that to you so that you can make those decisions without any gaps, any missing pieces or anything like that. So I think that's very pivotal, I think, to a lot of this, and something that they definitely gain from that VetLink partnership.
I agree. Yeah, it's nice, when students are thinking about, different schools, and someone's thinking about Vassar, and then I'll reach out to them and we'll have a hour-long Zoom meeting so I can tell them a little more. If they're able to, they'll come visit campus. We put them in touch with current Vassar veterans so they can have, their own, conversation outside of me. Like, I can tell you about Vassar. I can tell you, how wonderful it is. I can tell you about the area, but I have not lived that same student veteran experience being here on our campus. So that's where I'll turn you over to some of our current students, to talk about that. And yeah, that's one of the great things that we can do, working with Service to School, because they've kind of brought you to us.
I know from speaking to some of those students that they absolutely love everything that you have done. I think multiple times you have been described as a mama bear in many situations there in Vassar. So I love it. I'm glad that you're there for our service users. I guess now I would like to kind of open it up to the current applicants that are joining us. If you guys have any questions or have any, would like any clarification on anything, we would love to have that. If you would just drop a question, either I or Colleen can answer it for you. If it's very specific to your situation, I would suggest maybe emailing it to me or your advisor, whichever one of us, and we can, field that question in a little bit more of a private manner if needed. But I'll give maybe a couple of minutes for anybody that maybe wants to ask any questions.
And kind of while we're waiting for those questions, a couple other things came to mind of just some tips, right? While you're in this application process is, think about, you're going to need, when you're putting your application together, you're going to need transcripts from any school you've attended, right? Your high school, any college work you may have done. So start reaching out and getting those transcripts now, right? Especially the high school ones. Sometimes, depending on how far, far back in history it was, it can take 6 weeks to obtain a high school transcript. So and that's stagnant, right? The high school transcript's not going to change, or a college you attended a few years ago, that's not going to change, right? So reach out and get those documents now, and just save yourself that last minute, oh, it's a March 15th deadline to have all my application materials, and I'm still missing my high school transcript, right? And we can't read a file without that. So it's important to do any of those things ahead of time that you can, and just save yourself some stress at the end.
That's right.
Same
I
thing.
actually just talked to
if-
somebody last night about that.
Yeah. Yeah, same kind of thing. If you happened to have taken AP courses and took an AP exam in high school, get those scores. Or if you want us to consider your SAT scores or your ACT scores, right, get those things, start getting those and finding those now.
I guess so far
Questions?
we don't have any questions, which
Surprise.
is, that's all right. I'll take that. Hopefully that means that we've explained everything as much as we possibly can. If, for whatever reason, again, anybody has any questions, they can send them to me, Whitney at servicetoschool.org. And I am happy to field whatever they may be. If you have not considered Vassar yet, I would highly suggest looking into them. I think they're a phenomenal little school, and I think they do great things for our service members over there. And with so many supports in place as well. Like, again, Colleen is one of those supports.
Yeah, no, please come check out Vassar. We're a great community here. As Whitney said, we're a small school, about 2,400 in the Northeast, with a great student veteran population and a strong community. Yeah, I think
important note, I think a smaller student to faculty ratio as well, if I'm not mistaken, which in many cases our service members want and need that smaller, setting, and definitely much more interaction with professors and instructors. Let's see, we have a question. It says, I have a 3.9 GPA, but I have only done one quarter. Will this lack of college history hurt me?
No, it wouldn't hurt you at all. And it's good to see recent college experience.
Yeah.
Right. That's what sometimes that's, really nice to see, especially like someone who may have had a really difficult high school period, right? But can now show us, hey, recently academically, I'm thriving, and that's what we want to see. Okay, that's great. Now we know you've got that potential. And even the same thing with college experience, right? First time in college may have not been a great experience, but something more recent, right? In the last, either currently right now or the last year or two, you've had a much better experience, and that's what we want to see. So,
yeah. Just make sure that you are, if you have one semester now, right, make sure that you're doing that end of term report. And then of course, next semester, if you are applying for fall 2024, make sure you're doing that midterm report and submitting those final grades. That's definitely an important piece of that puzzle.
Yeah, and we will, we really like to, we'll ask for those midterm grades in the spring, right, to give us a little bit, and those are self-reported, right? So self-reporting where you think you stand, at this midterm, that does factor in quite a bit when we're reviewing applications.
Yeah,
so, an important piece.
Let's see, do veterans attending Vassar have the option to use financial aid instead of their GI Bill benefits?
Yes and no. So I would say that we will ask everyone to use your GI Bill while you're here at Vassar. But we know that the GI Bill is not going to cover the full tuition, right? Because they have a maximum per year. And Vassar is committed to meeting your full need for tuition and fees. So whatever the GI Bill is not going to cover, Vassar will cover the remainder of that for all of your time here at Vassar. We also provide you with private health insurance as part of your Vassar scholarship. We provide you with the meal plan here on campus. You're not expected to pay for that. Vassar pays for that. If you live off campus, then through our financial aid, those students will get a refund for money to use towards groceries if you're living off campus. So it's kind of offset in those ways. I have been seeing a trend in in my students where many of them are migrating from the GI Bill to VRE, the Chapter 31, and in that way they're saving that GI Bill for down the road. I think this past year I had 5 people do that, so that's wonderful. So it's a great way to save your GI Bill. We've got a couple folks on campus here who are like pros at doing that, so they're talking others through it. I actually had someone from the VA come in and did a workshop with our students and said, all of you should be doing this, and here's how to do it, and I am your contact person. So she has like ushered them through to do that. It's been really wonderful.
I love that you guys brought somebody in. When you realized that those students were using it, you brought somebody in to make sure that everything was going to go smoothly. That is, again, that's those supports that we're talking about, and that, could make a difference between somebody having their GI Bill and, potentially getting to use it later for graduate school or something along those lines. So I'm glad that you guys have done that and have spearheaded that. So that's phenomenal. And great question. Great question.
Yeah.
Because that's always an important factor.
It is.
Let's see, aside from the high school transcript, is there anything else that is needed or considered from high school?
Yeah, again, so that's part of that supplement or the support piece of the Common App, right? Where, yes, we're going to look at your high school transcript, but also tell us, like I said, if you were involved with any activities, any sports, if you were working, right? That's an important piece too, right? Tell us, like, yes, I was a cashier at McDonald's. I was working for a landscape company, whatever it may be, that you may have had multiple jobs while you were going to high school. I was responsible for, my parents were both working 2 or 3 jobs. I was responsible for my 3 younger siblings, right? After school, or taking them to, ushering them or driving them around, right? We see all of that. And many times we can understand, okay, that's why high school may have been tough, because you were also working 20 hours and you were taking care of siblings, or you were taking care of another family member. So all of those things are important, as well as sometimes, family dynamics, right? Your mother left, your father left, these are the things that were going on in my life during this time. And that's important for us to know as well.
Yep. Again, it's another piece of that puzzle.
Yeah, exactly.
See, any other questions from anybody? I think that was a great one. Again, we look at how you spend the bulk of your day, and then we look at what else is going. So, I'm a full-time student, or I'm an active duty veteran. And then I'm, outside of the active duty, what are they doing to spend the rest of their time? Oh, well, on top of being active duty, they're going to school. Oh, and on top of going to school, they're also volunteering here, or they're doing this here, or they have family commitments here. It's seeing that overall picture of how they, who they are, and really, again, how they're spending the bulk of their time, so that you have an understanding for it.
And a lot of times, I'll hear from people and they'll be like, well, I only did that, that one weekend, or, oh, it wasn't enough hours. I didn't think it was a big enough deal to put down. And like, no, like, it's a one-day community service project. Tell us about that. Right. And in a sense, I'm always like, nothing is too small, right? It's better to see it all, kind of thing.
I agree. And again, that's seeing the value. Again, seeing the value in the courses that you took, the training that you did, the job that you did, whatever it may be. It's, again, seeing who you are, what you've done, where you've been, the skills that you gained from those things, and how it has brought you here to applying to potentially a school like Vassar or one of our other partner schools. It's seeing that path, that trajectory, and everything that came into play to make that person who they are to this day.
Exactly.
And that VetLink addendum, I think it's such a valuable piece. I know for my husband, it was a huge valuable piece for his application process. And I cannot tell you enough. I don't know how he would have been able to explain 15 years of service in a 250-word essay. He needed the VetLink addendum to talk about his military service. So, definitely it's an important tool in the discussion. And as somebody who's read applications, I've read applications from across the country, but I've always paid very close attention to service members. I could always tell service members who had help and those that did not. Their applications were so vastly different. So, utilize your ambassadors, utilize your advisor, ask us questions. That's what we are here for. We all have backgrounds in this. The people that we introduce you to, like Colleen, oh my gosh, I bet if Colleen got an email asking a question, I know she's going to answer it. Utilize all of these tools, all of these people that you have in this process, so that your application is just the best representation of who you are, and the student that you could be.
And if a school reaches out and offers you an interview, make sure you say yes and participate in that interview. I know that's, we don't do that for our traditional students. We just, if there's a traditional student that, someone coming out of high school and they want to do an interview, well, if there's an alum available, we'll do that. And we don't put, it factors in, but it's not a big piece, right? But for all of our veteran applicants, we offer you an interview. And from Vassar, you would be interviewing with one of my veteran student interns, right? So in a sense, a peer, and it's more of a conversation, right? People are like, well, it's done, it can be done by Zoom, it can be done by phone. And a lot of times folks are like, well, what do I wear? How do I prepare? I'm like, you don't need to prepare, right? It's just going to be a conversation. They've got some questions they're going to ask. And again, it's just to kind of flesh out some of those things we might not have been able to learn about you in the Common App. But the fact that you took the time for this interview shows us that you do have a real honest interest in Vassar.
Yep, cannot agree more. Do the interview. Oh, do the interview. It could be such an important piece. It could be so important. They can find out so much information in just a simple conversation. Always do the interview. Never, do not avoid it. Please do it. All right, well, that is all that I have for today for this webinar. If you have any other questions, as I said, about the VetLink addendum or anything else, please feel free to reach out to me. It is Whitney at servicetoschool.org. You can find my email either on the website, or if you are one of my potential applicants, then obviously just reply to one of my emails. But Colleen, thank you so much. Thank you for everything that you do, for advocating for our service members on campus, and for being the mama bear that I know you are up there at Vassar.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. And thank you for having me today. And if any of you have any questions, whether it's Vassar or just general questions, I'm happy to answer them. So just reach out to me. It's comallet@vassar.edu.
All right. Thank you. And have a good night.
You too. Have a great day.